My trip to India, Groovy Baseball, custom GPTs, AI hype, Groq, I'll explain that, and the usual combination of silly tweets and toots. Welcome to Tales from the Jar Side. Welcome. My name is Ken Cousin. This is my free weekly newsletter, Tales from the Jar Side, video version. This week, we talk about a wide range of topics and start with my trip to India. Now, let me give you the regular introduction. Welcome, fellow jarheads, to Tales from the Jar Side, the Cousin IT newsletter for the week of April 14th through 21st, and I forgot to update the date again. No, it's April 21st through 28th. Sorry about that. This week, it says I taught the week at the Great, oh my goodness, I was a mess yesterday. I just got back from India and clearly I wasn't thinking straight. I participated in the Great International Developer Summit at developersummit.com, held in Bangalore, India, all week. So I gave 7 talks and it was very busy, and then I flew all the way back. That was a 4-hour flight from Bangalore to Doha, and then a layover, and then 14 hours to Boston, and then the Logan Express bus to Framingham, and then about an hour and 40-minute drive home from there. So yeah, it was a full day. Regular readers of and listeners to, and of course video viewers of this newsletter are affectionately known as jarheads, and are far more intelligent, sophisticated, and of course attractive than the average newsletter reader, listener, or viewer. If you wish to become a jarhead, please subscribe using the button on the newsletter or subscribe using the YouTube channel. You're welcome to do so. So let's start off with GIDS, the Great International Developer Summit in Bangalore. Here, I'll click on that just to show you what the homepage for the website looks like at developersummit.com. And you can see they start off with a picture of Venkat, because of course they do. But they run through several other people as well. There's Neil Ford, who was not there, and Michael Carducci, who was. And then a goofy looking picture of some guy you might recognize who desperately needs a hat. And then Mark Richards, who was also not there, and I think they cycle around again. At any rate, you get the idea. So, in addition to giving the talks, one of the nice things about the conference is I get to meet a lot of people that I haven't seen in a while and get together with those I have. So this photo that I have included right here includes me with Venkat Subramaniam on the left, and in between us is Rebecca Parsons, who's a major player at ThoughtWorks. She basically runs their ThoughtWorks radar, among many other things, and I mentioned her in last week's newsletter as writing the summary for the radar this week, and I really, really liked it, so I was very happy to get a chance to tell her that I was pleased to meet her and to get to know her and get a chance to talk to her about her work and what she's been doing lately. So that's what I was talking about. She put up that blog post called Macro Trends in the Tech Industry. Here's what it looked like. And they're asking for cookies. Yeah, whatever. So this is the high-level strategy document, discussed all things AI and architectural patterns for LLMs. And that was part of her keynote. The question about open source models as they've been evolving due to pressures that have been going on in the industry, a bit about online developer tools, the rise of monoliths. Again, I can't help thinking of 2001. Rethinking infrastructure as code, the rise of the Rust programming language. Again, it's mostly vulnerabilities in memory, and Java's always been pretty good about that. Mixed reality issues, which highlighting the fact that the Apple Vision Pro is, I don't know how you can call that anything but a failure at this point, but we'll see. I mean, it's version 1 and, maybe there's a future for that. Pull requests and continuous integration, the idea of evolving the strategy for doing team development. The closer you can get to continuous integration, the better, and so on. And those are the top level things, and I do recommend reading that. I think it's fascinating. Okay, now another person that I met who I did not place at first was Ari Kaplan. Now, Ari Kaplan, I knew I'd recognize the name, I just couldn't place it. And it turns out that if you just look at his LinkedIn profile, he's head of evangelism at a company called Databricks, and that didn't really mean anything to me. But it turns out he's one of the original founders of the entire science, if you will, of sabermetrics, the application of statistical studies to baseball performance. Now, I've been a follower of sabermetric ideas for, 20 years or more, probably since the mid-90s, something like that. So I guess that's getting to be 30 years? Anyway, it's been a while. And he was there at the beginning and worked for many of the Major League Baseball teams. In fact, the character of Peter Brand in the Moneyball movie that was played by Jonah Hill, I think he got an Academy Award nomination for that, was based on a composite of a few people, and Ari Kaplan was one of them. He apparently received one of the Caltech's Alumni of the Decade Awards for his contributions to sabermetrics and mechanisms to evaluate pitcher talent and reliever effectiveness, things like that. One of the stories he told me is in 1995, he strongly recommended, while he was on the staff of the Montreal Expos, that they draft this pretty athletic catcher from Michigan in the 18th round. They would have drafted him higher, but he also looked like he was going to get drafted in the NFL, and they weren't sure they were going to be able to get him. And as it turned out, they didn't get him. He went into the NFL and had a pretty respectable career. Yeah, I think Tom Brady went on to be okay, so as it turned out. He also was a contributor to a book that I used years ago. I had no idea. The book is called Baseball Hacks, Tips and Tools for Analyzing Winning with Statistics. The book is dated 2006. I think I picked it up in a Barnes & Noble, maybe a Borders bookstore back then. I don't know. Right around 2007 or 8. And one of the interesting things about it is that there was a link in there that allowed you to download the box scores of games every day and historically. And I didn't even know such a thing was available. And he said that exposing that link to the outside world had a big impact on the baseball industry at the time. MLB could decide whether to go with it or not, and they decided to just let it be open like that. And I remember when I was writing my first book, which was Making Java Groovy, one of my first examples, here's an image from it, was called Groovy Baseball. The idea was to access that site, download the previous day's box scores, parse the box scores in XML, to give you an idea how long ago that was, and then put little dots on a Google map to center the games on the home stadium of each team. So in other words, you see here, there's a little pop-up showing that apparently on Friday, June 11th of 2011, the Boston Red Sox beat Milwaukee Brewers 10-4, and you see that's centered on Fenway Park in there. So that example in the book wasn't really about baseball. It was about accessing remote data and parsing XML and saving information in a database, because the locations of the stadiums were all geocoded and saved in a MySQL database, I think it was. And then using a groovelet, believe it or not, that was a groovy version of a servlet, just to serve up the big page with the Google Map in it and all of that, including the little calendar widget and everything. So there's almost no JavaScript at all in that. Nowadays, you do it all in JavaScript probably, other than the library for the Google Map and the calendar widget. That was pretty much it. It was not a book that I spent a lot of time on because it mostly talked about Perl and database processing with MySQL and a few other things like that, stuff I didn't do a lot of. But it was a big influence on me at the beginning, and as Ari was saying, a lot of people grabbed that data, and it was very interesting how that happened. So I've been following baseball writers for a couple of decades now, and I discovered when I was learning this stuff that I enjoy reading about it a lot more than actually doing it. Doing it's too much like work. And there's a big difference between doing statistics and interpreting statistics, and really, really good baseball writers can make the statistics sing. I mean, guys like Joe Sheehan, who I strongly recommend. I'm a lifetime subscriber to Joe Sheehan's newsletter, which has this website that looks, ancient and everything, but it's still excellent here. He really knows exactly what to do with the stats and how to make them make sense and interpret them and draw conclusions and learn a lot about how things are actually happening and using the statistics for insight rather than just for arguments. Really nice. And I've never actually met one of the real life sabermetricians in person, and to meet Ari was quite a pleasure. So I enjoyed that. Now, I was going to summarize all my talks. I gave 7 of them, but that would get kind of long and boring, so I'll just mention a few things. I did create a GIDSBot, a custom GPT that was based on the conference. I think if I click on that, you'll see it'll open in ChatGPT, and you see that instead of saying GPT-4, it's got my little GIDSBot up here, and there's questions like tell me about GIDS and who are the speakers and how do you register and where is it held and things like that. If I click on the where is it held, for example, you'll see it should say something, I hope, about being held in Bangalore. Yep, there we go. The JN Tata Auditorium in Bangalore, India. That's a little oversimplified, but that is the right idea. And the way I set up the bot is I built a custom GPT where I uploaded a PDF of the schedule and also pointed it in the instructions to the website and tried to get it to answer questions that way. The other thing I added, which I didn't make much of a deal about here, but I talked about in my talk, is that with the bots here, you could have them do what are called actions, and that is accessing an external API. In my case, what I did is I wrapped the Open Weather Map API in a Spring Boot app and made it so that you could find out the weather specifically in Bangalore. So I could ask something like, what is the weather like at the conference? And what it should do, hopefully, is go to my external application that I built. And then, yes, now because I deliberately didn't say okay always on this because I was showing this in the presentation. GIDSBot wants to talk to, and there's my deployed app on Heroku. Only allow sites you trust, and I'll just again click allow. And then it's going to go, and again, it's hard coded to put in the latitude and longitude of Bangalore. And says broken clouds, temperature 29.85 C, humidity is about 45%. So it's hot and it's humid, although not nearly as bad as it could have been, as it will be later in the year. So it was an example of how to use an external API there and how to make the bot do that itself. So that was a lot of what I did with that. Now I did bring up the money issue because everybody always wants to know, can you make any money making that? And here were my conclusions. I did this on separate slides, but here's the summary. Yeah, LOL for making money on there. But I thought there was a GPT store, and there is. But of course, it features a half dozen of the top ones, and then nobody else makes it to that front page. You got to go search. How do I, they say a small number of creators are being considered for revenue sharing, which means, again, you're going to need to be one of the top 10 user-driven bots if you're going to make any money at all. And I guarantee you, if you're reading this or seeing this, you're not in that group of people. How do I get admitted? Yeah, oh, you sweet summer child. Yes. How much can you make? I mean, nobody knows. And I don't even know that those top people are getting paid either. So you don't do this for the money. Not only, in fact, I forgot to mention, there are already somewhere between 3 and 4 million custom GPTs there. So it's really tough to stand out. But there is a reason to build these things. And first of all, I mean, it took me, 20 minutes to put together the bot without the action. The action took extra time because basically the bot talks to an API. So you have to set up an external API and create the open API file for it, what we used to call Swagger, a document to explain how to use the API to the bot. And that took me a little extra time, especially the deployment to Heroku. But other than that, just creating the bot and adding all your data to it was trivial. And that is by far the easiest thing to do, is to add your own data to this AI model. Worked out really, really well. It's also very simple to make your custom GPT available to others, either via a link or publicly. If you're going to do it inside your organization, I mean, and why wouldn't you? You could just add a few of your own documents and then make them exposed within the company or even outside, via the link. As long as there's nothing, dangerous or proprietary in there, it's fine. If you get into actions, that starts to feel like you're coding, and you might prefer to actually code it using the Assistance API, or what I recommend is one of the major frameworks. In Java, we have LangChain for J on the way, and Spring AI also coming a little bit behind LangChain for J, but that's the programming model, and I'd recommend that instead. Okay, another talk I gave the keynote Wednesday morning on managing your AI-driven manager, and I was struggling with that a bit until I realized what that really was a managing your manager talk with some changes and updates for AI-driven information. So I talked much more about that, and the attendees seemed to really respond well to that. I talked about building a constructive loyalty relationship with your manager, but emphasizing that when I say the word loyalty, I don't mean loyalty like to a family member or loyalty to even a good friend. This is a transactional business relationship. You're loyal to them basically means that you will support them in their efforts and back up their decisions, and they will try to back up you in your career, get you what you need, protect you from the vicissitudes of organizations or whatever happens inside the company, fight the organizational battles for you, that sort of thing, and build up a decent relationship that way that you can rely on when the crisis comes. There was a point that I make in the book, my Help Your Boss Help You book, is that a good answer today is better than a great answer next week, in direct contrast to how things work in school. And then when I got to the AI part, I started with the good old hype cycle. I imagine most viewers of this newsletter have seen that before. This is the Gartner hype cycle, where every technology starts with a trigger and eventually reaches the so-called peak of inflated expectations. And then the backlash starts and we dropped all the way down into the trough of disillusionment. Yeah, this is terrible. Why did we ever bother? You know, after finally going, oh, the silver bullet, we found it at last, then we're back to, this was a waste of time and money. Slowly you move up the slope of enlightenment, and eventually you reach the plateau of productivity where you can say, the things it was designed for, it does pretty well. And when I don't use it outside of that, or I recognize its limitations and act accordingly, it does a decent job. And that's the debate, is where are we with AI on this chart? And some people would argue we're still on the way up toward that peak. Some would say we're at the peak. Some would say we're even starting to head down toward the trough of disillusionment. I know I've seen some backlash myself already. So we're somewhere in that ballpark. We're not at the trough yet, but we're working our way through it. And it's good to be aware of this. So I talked about that, and I had some recommendations about how building the relationships is important anyway, not to mention the fact that what you wind up doing, hopefully, is becoming the AI resource, the AI expert for your manager. They don't have time to do all these investigations, and you don't really know what they can do and what they can't until you actually spend the time playing with it, and that'll be your job. So it's also gives you an excuse to play with the latest toys, so hey, that could be good. Another thing that happened at the conference is everybody wanted to connect on LinkedIn. I mean, now maybe that's an Indian thing. I doubt it, but it was certainly significant. And I gained a ton of connections on LinkedIn because as long as you're not obviously a recruiter or a spammer, sure, I'm happy to connect to people on LinkedIn. That's fine. And that's just an interesting social media trend. I notice on the YouTube channel for Tales from the Jar Side, what I'm publishing this on, if you look at the geographic breakdown of my viewers, now this is just for the last month, you see that India is a very close second for me to the US, and everything else is way beyond that, much, much smaller. And I just always resonated well with Indian audiences. I get it, and they seem to get me. And I think some of it has to do with the fact that I was always an academic, well-star. I mean, I was always good at school, and their educational system is at least compatible with what I went through decades ago. I mean, things may have changed a lot over the years. I mean, they definitely have, but we understand each other. We think the same way, or at least we get it, and that seems to help us resonate. There may be other reasons. Maybe they're just nice to everybody. I don't know, but they're nice to me, certainly. And that's fun. So I always enjoy visiting, and it's a very enthusiastic crowd. Now, the downside was I did not get the Tales from the Jar Side newsletter video published last week. I tried to do it in the hotel on Monday before the conference started, but I messed it up. I recorded the wrong screen, and I just couldn't face doing it over again. So no actual video last week. This week, I'll publish this video, and if I can, I'd like to get at least one more, but something a bit more technical going on. But we'll see how that goes. Finally, again, one of the reasons I go is I get to see a lot of people I like. This is a picture taken by Mary Grugleski. She's there in the corner there holding the camera. I'm next to her on the left, and there's, let's see if I can make that bigger. There's Danny Nohosa, who's a no-fluff speaker. Scott Davis is a former one, and he's really, really good at the accessibility stuff. He did the keynote on the last day talking about touch and sight and smell and all the different ways you can interact with these things. And of course, my friend Michael Carducci as well. Over here is Ari Kaplan that I was just telling you about. I couldn't remember the person's name I got introduced to there, but that turns out that's Ivar Grimstad, who spends a lot of time at conferences in Europe. So I've seen him a few times. I know he was at DevNexus, but I haven't actually spent much time talking to him. And hidden back there is Keto Man. He's just a little bit blocked by everybody else. So it was really fun seeing everybody again. All right, let's go to the next section. Now, I did do one thing technical. Another one of the speakers while I was in the speaker room was telling me about the Groq website, Groq. I initially was skeptical because I thought he meant Groq as in Grok, the one from Twitter. And the last thing I want to do is support Elon Musk in anything anymore. I'm disgusted with the guy, and I have no faith whatsoever in anything that he puts his name on. But this had nothing to do with that. No, here's the website for Groq. It's actually, it looks like www.groq.com. No, it's WOW, wow, which only a marketing person could think of, .groq.com. And what it's really all about is the ability to access several open source models very, very quickly. You use this thing they call the Groq Cloud, and when you read the documentation, you find out that they're using the exact same API as OpenAI, as the ChatGPT model, which I'd already implemented. So that when you look at the curl request or at the JSON data, it looks just like the OpenAI one. The only thing is if you look and see what models they have, they've got Llama 3, also the 70 billion parameter one, Mixtral, and Gemma. Now, yes, I could access those locally using the Ollama system, and I normally do, but the real feature of using Groq is it is incredibly fast. That's the idea, is that it's unbelievably quick. And in fact, I prepared a bit of a demo here. Let me go to my demo. So this is a parameterized test called sum word lengths, and it takes a model, and because it's a parameterized test, my value source is going to use the big Llama 3 version and Mixtral and Gemma. I'm going to pass this user message. What is the sum of the lengths of the words in the sentence? The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. Show all your steps. Now, the length of this sentence is 36 characters. So I pass that request in for each of these one by one. I'm going to measure the time it takes to get back a response, print it out, print out the usage, extract the string response and print it, and see if it's at least close to 36. So let me run that. And there was a startup time, of course, but if you take a look, you'll see that with the Llama 3 one, it took 1.3 seconds, pretty quick. And it's very good at figuring out the lengths of the words. Those all look correct to me. But then somehow it adds them all up and gets the wrong total. Which, that's the 70 billion parameter one. You would think it would do better than that. With Mixtral, here again, they put out all the words, and it looks like the lengths look correct, and then again, it adds them wrong for some reason. And Gemma, I think, doesn't even get the word lengths right. Yeah, for some reason, it thinks Brown has 6 letters. That seems to be the one that's off for some reason. And then got a total that's bigger than any of them. So, okay, basic math is a problem. I made a video about that earlier. But the point was, each of these things took very little time. This one took 750 milliseconds. The Mixtral one took a little over a second. Llama 3 took 1.3 seconds. But again, if I did them in a different order, that might be different. And at least it's very, very fast. I still normally do that with Ollama, so I run on my local machine. But, since it was so easy, all I had to do was register, get a key, and run with Groq here. Figured why not. Okay, so back to the newsletter. That shows the same test and explaining what went on. And I'll probably make a video about that because you see it was very quick and easy to set up and easy to do. Let's move on to the tweets and toots. So this one said, "Surgeon, relax, David. This is a small surgery. No need to panic." Patient says, "My name is not David." And surgeon says, "No, my name is David." Yeah. Maybe there's some need to panic there. Who knows? It's a puzzlement, right? So this one, the genie says 3 rules. No wishing for death, no falling in love, no bringing back dead people. So he says, "I wish puzzle pieces would moan when they fit correctly." The genie replies, "There are 4 rules." Obviously, that's a meme that's been refactored many, many times, but my wife spends a lot of time doing puzzles. She really enjoys those. So, of course, I put that in for her. I referred to her as the puzzle queen, and she laughed, as you'd expect. Preferred means of contacting me. There was a theme going around again on Mastodon of the ranking the ways to contact me with, like, calling me on the phone near step 100. Well, this one said, 1, a message whispered into the wind at midnight. Or 2, a handwritten missive tied to a raven's leg. 3 is a dead drop. And then way down at 100 is a seance. Yeah, I can see why that might not be a good one. And then a number so large as to be incomprehensible to the mortal mind, Microsoft Teams. Yeah, I imagine for many companies that would be Slack channel. Same idea. So very good. This one was a commentary on the debugging that went on with the Voyager spacecraft. It says nobody on the Voyager team should have to pay for their own drink ever again. Yeah, they did an absolutely unreal phenomenon of remote debugging. Herculean is barely a big enough term to describe this thing. I mean, this is a spacecraft that was built under technology that was proven in the 60s. I mean, the spacecraft was launched in 77. Oh, shoot, I put 97. That was 77. Sorry about that. Boy, another blunder there. 1977. And, of course, they don't launch state-of-the-art equipment. They launch proven equipment. So that equipment was state-of-the-art probably in the late 60s. And here they managed to figure out what was going wrong with the ship, which turned out to be a single chip in memory, and then work around it, build a mechanism to allow it to route around that. All with the tiny baud rate that they have accessing the spacecraft, which is 22 light hours away. You know, it took 22 hours for each message to get there, and then it had to implement, and then 22 hours to come back with a message at all. I mean, the ship is 15 billion miles away, and it is currently speeding away from the Earth at 38,000 miles an hour, and they were able to do the debugger. I mean, it was just incredible. And I adopted Groq because I didn't want to wait for my own Llama 3 to start on my own local machine. So, yeah, that was amazing. Sparkling zip files. This says, remember, they're only jars if they come from the Java region of Indonesia. Otherwise, they're sparkling zip files. If you're not familiar with a meme, and I imagine most readers of this newsletter are familiar with it, but I grabbed some examples. The meme is based on the idea that legally only wines from the Champagne region of France are named Champagne, while others are just sparkling wine. So this was a good one. It said, actually, it's only existentialism if it comes from the existentialism region of France, otherwise it's sparkling anxiety. That's pretty good. I would have hoped for something a little bit more, I don't know, existential, reasoning, being, and all that. But I couldn't come up with anything either, so let's just move on. Or this, it's only jQuery if it's from the jQuery region of France. Otherwise, it's just sparkling JavaScript. Yeah, okay. This one was from an article I found online. It's only physics if it comes from the physique region of France. Otherwise, it's just sparkling math. Yeah, I've got some physicists who'd like to discuss that. This was a bit of a meta meme. Technically, it's not a meme unless it's from the meme region of France. Otherwise, it's a sparkling joke. Yeah, okay. And then finally, actually, Champagne is the region in France. The beverage is Champagne's Monster. Rimshot, But was Champagne the monster all along, right? I'll push that meme a little bit. And then finally this one, which said, exercise is basically hurting yourself until you build up an immunity to hurting yourself. kind of like good old iocane powder. And I'm trusting that you get a Princess Bride reference without me having to push that. So that was my week, and I didn't talk too much about it. Hopefully that is enough of what you wanted to see. And I did all those talks. I even had my regular Trinity class at 4 in the morning on one of the days, the day before the keynote, actually. But it was worth it. I mean, I had a really good time at the conference, and then we'll see how it goes. Now, this week I'm teaching Reactive Spring tomorrow, and then this weekend I'm traveling to Wakefield, Mass., the Boston area, for the No Fluff Just Stuff event there. And then in a couple weeks, we have a No Fluff event in Madison, Wisconsin. And then hopefully things will quiet down a little bit. Says there's a comment here. That comment was me adding in Ivar Grimstad's name to the photo. That the person I was unable to identify, Heinz Kibbutz, was kind enough to send me that message. Heinz has a fantastic newsletter, a Java specialist and everything. I seriously recommend that you take a look at what he does. So there's the newsletter this week. Hope you had a good time. Keep in touch. Feel free to subscribe, and let's play that theme song. Take care, everybody.
It's time to tune in to Tales from the Jar, so let's begin. Java, Kotlin, and Spring, oh my. Groovy, Gradle, don't be shy. Tales from the Jar side, oh yeah. Crack open the code, let's take a ride. From design patterns to the latest trends, your weekly tech talks that never end.